June 12, 1943, 25,000 feet over northern France. The throttle felt solid beneath Captain Robert S. Johnson's gloved hand as he scanned the sky for enemy fighters. Below him, the rest of the 56th Fighter Group's Thunderbolts climbed toward their patrol altitude. Behind them, a formation of B-17 bombers droned toward Germany. Johnson's P-47 Thunderbolt, call sign Half Pint, was the heaviest single-engine fighter in the world. 7 tons of Republic steel, armor plating, and American engineering wrapped around a 2,000-horsepower Pratt & Whitney engine. It was supposed to protect the bombers from German fighters. But there was a problem. A big problem. The Thunderbolt couldn't turn with a Messerschmitt. It couldn't climb with a Focke-Wulf. And in the brutal dogfights over Europe, that was getting American pilots killed. Then, on a summer afternoon over France, Robert Johnson made a discovery that would change everything. A discovery that would turn the P-47 from a struggling fighter into an absolute killing machine. This is the story of how American pilots learned to use their greatest weakness as their deadliest weapon. How they stopped trying to outturn the Germans and started falling on them like anvils from heaven. This is the story of why P-47 pilots started diving straight down and achieved kill ratios of 19-1. March 15, 1943, Debden Airfield, England. The 56 Fighter Group's first combat missions were disasters waiting to happen. Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Zemke, the group commander, watched his pilots taxi out in their brand new P-47s and felt a knot in his stomach. His boys were good. They'd trained hard in the States, but they were about to face Luftwaffe veterans who'd been killing people since 1939. The numbers told the story. The P-47 Thunderbolt weighed 14,000 pounds fully loaded. A Messerschmitt Bf-109 weighed 7,000 pounds. In a turning fight, physics was brutally simple. The lighter aircraft could turn inside the heavier one every single time. Captain Francis Gabby Gabreski, who would become America's top European ace with 28 kills, described his first dogfight in his diary. The 109 was on my tail in seconds. I pulled back on the stick as hard as I could. The jug shuddered, the wings groaned, but we turned like a truck trying to race a sports car. I could see him cutting inside my turn, closing the distance. His guns started flashing. Gabreski survived that encounter, but barely. Others didn't. In their first 3 months of combat, the 56th Fighter Group lost 12 pilots. They shot down 9 German aircraft. The math was deadly simple. They were losing more than they were killing. Something had to change. June 26, 1943, over the French coast. Over the French coast. Robert S. Johnson found himself in the situation every P-47 pilot feared. A Focke-Wulf FW-190 on his 6 o'clock, closing fast, guns blazing. Johnson was 23 years old, from Lawton, Oklahoma. He'd been in combat for exactly 3 months. He'd scored his first kill 2 weeks earlier. And now, with tracer rounds streaking past his canopy, he was about to discover something that would save his life and revolutionize American fighter tactics. He couldn't outturn the Focke-Wulf. That was suicide. He couldn't outclimb it. The 19 would follow him up and shoot him out of the sky. So Johnson did the only thing his 7-ton fighter could do better than anything else in the sky. He pushed the stick forward and dove straight down. In his memoir, Thunderbolt, Johnson described what happened next. I shoved that stick into the dashboard, pointed that big nose straight at France. The altimeter unwound like a broken watch. 5,000 feet per second gone, then 7,000, then 10,000. The jug screamed, the wings shook, but she held together. I glanced back through the canopy. The Focke-Wulf was still following, but something was wrong. His dive was shallower. He was falling behind. And then, at 12,000 feet, he pulled out. He gave up. That's when I understood. The Thunderbolt wasn't a dogfighter. She was a battering ram that could shoot back. Johnson had stumbled onto the secret that would transform the P-47 into the most effective American fighter in Europe. Here's why it worked. The P-47 was built around the most powerful aircraft engine in service. the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp. 2,000 horsepower, 18 cylinders, massive and heavy. Add armor plating to protect the pilot. Add 8 50 caliber machine guns. Add self-sealing fuel tanks. Add a turbo supercharger the size of a trash can. The result was a fighter that weighed as much as 2 Messerschmitts. In a turn, that weight was a death sentence. But in a dive, weight became speed. Raw, terrifying, unstoppable speed. A P-47 in a full-power dive could exceed 550 miles per hour. Speeds that would literally tear the wings off a Messerschmitt or Focke-Wulf if they tried to follow. The Germans built their fighters light and agile, optimized for the turning dogfights that had dominated air combat since World War I. Those light airframes couldn't handle the structural stress of matching the Thunderbolt's dive speed. But here's the genius part. American pilots weren't diving to escape. They were diving to attack. The tactic became known as boom and zoom. Climb high, spot the enemy below, dive at terminal velocity, fire a devastating burst from 8 machine guns. That's 100 rounds per second of 50 caliber fire. Then use that incredible dive speed to zoom back up to altitude before the enemy can react. Major Gerald Johnson described it perfectly. "We don't dogfight anymore. We drop on them like stones. By the time they hear us coming, we're already climbing back to altitude for another pass." The Germans never had a chance. Their fighters were optimized for the wrong kind of fight. Once American pilots mastered boom and zoom tactics, the kill ratios flipped overnight. The 56th Fighter Group became the highest-scoring P-47 unit in the European theater. Final tally? 1,006 enemy aircraft destroyed in the air and on the ground. Their loss ratio? 19-1. For every P-47 they lost, 19 German aircraft went down. Let that sink in. 19-1. Francis Gabby Gabreski ended the war with 28 aerial victories. Robert S. Johnson scored 27 confirmed kills. Both men survived the war. Both men lived into their 80s. By D-Day, June 6, 1944, the Luftwaffe had learned to fear the distinctive silhouette of the Thunderbolt. German pilots called them Jabo, short for Jagdbomber, fighter bomber. But they had another name for them too, the 7-ton hammer. Franz Stigler, a Luftwaffe ace who survived the war, later wrote in his memoirs, "When you saw Thunderbolts above you at 25,000 feet, you knew what was coming. You could try to run. Sometimes you'd make it. But if they caught you, there was no fighting back. They came down so fast, fired so much ammunition, then climbed back up before you could even turn to engage. It wasn't combat. It was execution." The P-47's dive tactics didn't just change dogfighting doctrine, they changed the entire war in the air. By late 1944, the 8th Air Force had achieved complete air superiority over Europe. American bombers flew deep into Germany with P-47 Thunderbolts riding high above them, ready to dive on any Luftwaffe fighter that dared to attack. The Thunderbolt went on to destroy more enemy aircraft than any other American fighter in the European theater. Over 11,000 enemy aircraft destroyed, both in the air and on the ground. Over 15,000 P-47s were built. They served on every front of World War II. They pioneered tactics that would be used by fighter pilots for generations, tactics still taught at fighter weapons schools today. The lesson? Sometimes your greatest weakness, if you understand it deeply enough, can become your greatest strength. The P-47 couldn't turn with a Messerschmitt, but it didn't need to. It just needed to fall faster. And in the hands of pilots like Johnson and Gabreski, that was more than enough. Robert S. Johnson survived 91 combat missions and lived to be 78 years old. He never forgot that moment over France when he pushed the stick forward and discovered the secret. Francis Gabby Gabreski scored 28 victories in Europe and another 6.5 in Korea, becoming America's top-scoring living ace. He passed away in 2002 at age 86. The P-47 Thunderbolt earned its nickname honestly, the Jug, short for Juggernaut. Unstoppable, unbreakable, and in the hands of pilots who understood its strengths, absolutely lethal. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to WW2 Talk and hit that notification bell. We bring you the tactics, the technology, and the true stories of the men who fought in the skies of World War II. Until next time, remember the lesson of the Thunderbolt. Know your strengths, use them ruthlessly, and never fight the enemy's fight when you can force them to fight yours.